Hello everyone, welcome to another learning session. Today we are going to learn about Azure virtual machines. You have different levels of abstraction within cloud, right? The first level is infrastructure as a service, where you will get access to the virtual machines. Second level is platform as a service, where the virtual machines are taken away from you and you directly work on a platform based on your programming language choice or some other factors. And then you have serverless, where you do not even worry about the platform. You worry only about writing code, or even not writing code at all with the no code, low code solutions. And then you also have a software as a service, where you get a software, you just configure and use it. So there are different abstractions within cloud. It is not specific to Azure cloud, for all cloud. And the first level of abstraction is infrastructure as a service. And within Azure world, the primary service that we can use for infrastructure as a service is virtual machines. So since we will be practicing some of the virtual machine topics within Azure cloud during the session, there could be some delays during deployments and all. So maybe whatever doubts you have about the classes until now, or the future, or anything else, you can maybe ask during that deployment time, or towards the end, I will be waiting for all of your questions, and then I'll be allowing you to speak as well. You just have to raise your hand, and then I will allow you to speak, and then you can ask all of the questions you have about today's class, or any other classes, or even any other programs that we conduct. Okay, so I'll stay back until each one of your doubts are clarified. We have people who have never worked with cloud. So do not worry. So just go through the cloud computing playlist. I'll show all of those things towards the end. Anyway, you cannot watch them or learn or do anything during the session. But during the session, just make sure if you haven't understood anything that I say, just ask, and then I'll be explain it again. Even after the session also, you can ask in our knowledge exchange groups, or the forum CA specific groups. So that said, let us get started. So these are the things that we will be discussing today. Creating a virtual network will not look into much detail, but creating an Azure virtual machine with Windows operating system, connecting to that virtual machine using RDP, then setting up an IaaS server on our Windows virtual machine on Azure, then connecting to a Windows machine using Bastion, then creating a Bastion host through the Bastion service, then capturing and reusing generalized VM images, then attaching a disk to a virtual machine, then transferring an Azure managed disk between virtual machine. It's not mentioned here. We will also see how to share a disk between virtual machines. So I'll just update it in some time when we have the deployment break. We have a lot of things to cover, and then let us quickly get started. So there is a question, why only two people can log into a VM? Can you elaborate it? Okay, so you are talking about the RDP limitation. So this is not specific to an Azure VM, because when you say VM, it could be a Windows VM or a Linux VM. And so what is the protocol that we generally use to log into a Windows VM? It is RDP. Can anybody quickly tell me the port number you'll be using for logging into a Windows virtual machine through RDP? It is 3389. And what about a Linux machine? Do we use RDP? No. So what protocol do we use most commonly? It is SSH, and port is 22. With RDP, you have options to purchase additional licenses and then increase the count of allowed parallel connections and all. So the most important thing to learn about cloud is that cloud is just like doing something on somebody else's machine, the same thing that you have been doing on your on premises before moving to cloud. So having a proper understanding of how all of these tools work without cloud can help you learn cloud faster. Even areas such as DevOps or security, most of these concepts you are doing already on premises, now you are doing on cloud. When it comes to cloud, so you have something called as virtual networks. Virtual network is a private network within cloud where you can deploy your resources. And within virtual networks, you can have private IP addresses. So in the IP address session, the recording is available on YouTube channel. So we discussed about the public IP addresses, IPv4, IPv6, and also there are three ranges of private IP addresses that you can use within your virtual network. If you are only using private IP addresses, what is the limitation? You cannot reach those servers from the internet. So even within companies, you use private IP addresses. But in case if somebody wants to reach you through internet or from internet, you need to have some public IP addresses. So either if they are directly coming to that machine, you will assign a public IP address to that machine, or there are ways in which you can translate a public IP address into these private IP addresses and all. So all those networking things we will look into later. But now just understand that okay, we have something called as a virtual network, and if you are creating a virtual network as any other Azure service, you will select a subscription. Subscription is where your billing informations are there, where Azure will be getting money based on whatever resources you use from Azure. Okay, and then resource group. So these two have to be selected, and then you can give a virtual network name. So maybe we can give VNet 1-East US, and then you can see okay virtual network encryption or Azure Bastion firewall. So there are a lot of networking specific things that we will learn later. And then you need to have a subnet. So what is a subnet? Subnet is a sub network. So a virtual network will have lot of IP addresses, and those IP addresses we can divide into sub networks. Can somebody let me know what are the advantages of dividing a virtual network into different subnets? So there is a chat load balancing the traffic. No, for load balancing, you really don't need to create a subnet. Answer from a security perspective. Consider a web application that you can access from the internet. So what are the different components of that web application? You will have a web server, maybe a middleware server, but to make things simple, let us have a web server and a database server. Does all the end users have to really access your database servers? No, right? They have to only access your web server where the web pages are loading, and these web servers internally will be connecting to database servers. The web servers can be put into a subnet with internet access. So how do we configure internet access and all? So we have different mechanisms such as network security groups and all. So those things, the details of how network is configured, we will learn in our networking sessions. But now understand that, okay, different ports can be opened in these different subnets. For example, internet access is opened for the subnet where we are deploying web servers. And for the subnets where we are deploying database servers, it will only have access from the web server. And also the web servers, we could add load balancers and all in front of them, something that we will discuss as part of our networking sessions later. But now imagine that we are not using all those complicated things. In that case, if we want to access from internet, they need to have a public IP address. What about the database servers? Do they need to have a public IP address? Yes or no? Many of you have said yes, and few of you have said no. Those people who said no, tell me. So if those machines don't have a public IP address, how will we log into those machines and configure something or install something or take backup or do something within that machine? How will we do that if there is no public IP address? So virtual network is within your cloud. You are at your home, and then you need to do some maintenance work on those virtual machines that are deployed on your virtual network where database servers are installed, and those servers do not have a public IP address. So how do we log in and then do maintenance? Because if you need to do a RDP or SSH, you need the IP address, right? If you need to connect from your home. So a lot of people started work from home during the Corona days, right? So from home, how can I access these machines which are in a subnet that do not have public internet access, and machines do not even have public IP addresses? So how can I connect to these machines? So that is where a concept called as jump host or Bastion host come into picture. So the individual machines doesn't need to have a public IP address, but we will deploy a machine within the virtual network, and that machine will have a public IP address. So we will log into that machine, and from that machine, we will log into all other machines. So that is why this concept is called as a jump host. It is also called as a Bastion host. Azure provides a service called as Bastion, where all of these things are automated in few clicks. We will see that also in today's session. So now quickly answer, do we need a public IP addresses for a server, for a database server, for us to connect and then do some updates? Yes or no? No. So everybody are clear now, right? The reason is we have something called as Bastion host or jump host. So imagine that you have 100 database servers and all of them have a public IP address and you can log into all of them from the internet. Consider a hacking scenario where somehow your credentials are compromised. So now you'll have to remove the access for all of these 100 servers, right? So instead of that, you will only have internet access to one machine. So if something is compromised, just take that machine out of network or stop your access to that machine, and then somebody else who has access can figure out what to do. If you are not sure about how IP addresses work, you can watch the IP address recording, and if you have any doubts at all, just let me know, and if needed, I can take that session again. Okay, so coming back, so we can create subnetworks. We can add more subnetworks if you want. So one quick question, I have /16 there, right? So which is a bigger network, /16 or /8? Okay, yeah, everybody knows that /8 is bigger, because whatever slash you give here, it is actually used for identifying the network. The total for an IPv4 address is 32 bits. So /8 means 8 is used for finding that network or subnetwork, and the rest is used for actually allocating IP addresses to machines or services or other entities within that network. How much is that? It is 24, right? So if you have 16 for finding the network, how much is left? You have 16. 24 is bigger than 16, right? Okay, so and then you can create a subnet. Okay, I can create multiple subnets also, and then finally you add tags like to any service, and then you click on review and create, and then you create that virtual network. Since our primary topic for today is not virtual networks, we are not going to focus a lot on these things. So we'll learn how to do most of the things from a virtual machine perspective. So this is how you do from a virtual network. And within our virtual network session, we will be doing it this way. But since today's topic is virtual machines, we will create them from virtual machines. And I just wanted to show so that, okay, you will have some idea about virtual networks before we go to virtual machines. You can search for virtual machines and then go to virtual machines. It is just a computer on cloud. Okay, and then you can click on create Azure virtual machine. As with the most services, you select a subscription, you select a resource group. And I'll show you one more thing. So I have cleaned up everything on my AZ104 resource group, so that in the end we can see, okay, what all things were created. We'll give a name. So let us call it demo PM1. Region, you understand, right? The concept of regions, availability zones, data centers. So in the storage discussion also, before learning about the different redundancy we discussed, your whole Azure infrastructure, the global infrastructure across the world are divided into different regions. Regions are geography specific. For example, you have, if you check here, you have US itself, you have East US, South Central US, West US 2, West US 3. Within that region, you have three availability zones, and not all regions have the concept of availability zones. For some region, there is only one location or one set of data centers, basically one availability zone. If a region has multiple availability zones, they'll have different power, cooling, and all. If one data center within one availability zone go, you will have better chance of saving your data and your applications running if other data is available in some other availability zone. These three availability zones are within a single region. If you see here, availability zone, I have selected availability zone. I have two options, right? So one is select the zone. So here I can select if I want to deploy my virtual machine in zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, or only zone 2 and zone 3. Okay, I can do all those combinations, either deploy in 3 zones for very high availability, or deploy in 2. I can do all of those things. Regarding our other and recommended, so these are the recommended ones, right? So let us select some of the other ones, maybe South India. As you can see, availability zone is grayed out. So many of the other regions, you may not have the concept of three availability zones. So let us go back to East US. You may hear this term called zone redundant and all in our discussion. So this is all about deploying to different availability zones. Within availability zones, you have data center, right? And within a data center, you have different racks of servers. So what are the advantages of deploying across different racks? So it is better than having only one copy, right? So by default, if you select no infrastructure redundancy required, your VM will be part of any one rack. If you select availability zone, that means your VM will be part of different zones. If you select availability set, then it will be within a particular data center, but it will be spread across multiple racks. If you want to create a availability set, what do? You go and create this. Azure has this concept of fault domains and update domains. Fault domains are basically the racks. If a rack is gone, then your data has to be secure. So you can put it in 2 racks or even 3 racks. And update domains are a logical category where Azure will usually do their updates in one update domain at a time. It will distribute your app across 5 update domains in this case. There is one limitation. If you keep fault domain as 1, then update domain also has to be 1. So availability zone is across zones, and availability set is within a particular data center. We'll have a complete session on availability where we'll be discussing about availability zone, availability set, and even virtual machine scale sets. So virtual machine scale set is just a group of VMs and we can configure. Okay, so if the CPU usage is more, then increase the number of VMs in that set. If the CPU usage is less, then decrease the number of VMs in that set. It is a way of doing what scaling? Horizontal scaling or vertical scaling? There are two kinds of scaling, right? Vertical scaling and horizontal scaling. Again, something we discussed in the cloud computing part 1 and part 2 sessions. So can you quickly tell me, increasing the number of machines, is it horizontal scaling or vertical scaling? Everybody has mentioned it is horizontal. Vertical means you will be upgrading the RAM or upgrading the hard disk. So that will be a vertical scaling. So increasing the capacity of a machine is called as scale up, and decreasing the capacity of that machine is called as scale down. Similarly, increasing the number of machines in a scale set is called as scale out, and decreasing the number of machines in a scale set is called as scale in. So horizontal scaling, you have scale out and scale in. Vertical scaling, you have scale up and scale down. If you watch the prerequisite videos, it will be more clear. I hope at least you have a decent idea about availability on virtual machine scale set and availability set. So how to work with all of these, we will see in a different session. And then we can select the image. So here we can select, okay, whether I want a Windows Server 2022 image or whether I want to go with a Ubuntu image. So you can find some images here, and if you click on see all images, you get a lot from Microsoft, from Microsoft partners. So this is the marketplace. So now you have around 1 to 159 results, and then you can filter. Okay, so publisher type, you can say, okay, you want only the Microsoft ones, or I want the partner ones. We will see later, okay, we can even use our own images. So we will see that later today. So let us quickly get back to where we were before. Virtual machine name, demo VM1, East US, no infrastructure redundancy. There are different levels of security. So you have the basic level of security, you have the trusted launch virtual machines, and you have a much higher security version, which is the confidential virtual machines. Let us go with the default, which is trusted launch virtual machines. An image we selected. Okay, and VM architecture for this one, x64 is only supported one. You have this concept of Azure spot discounts. We will not be using it in this session. It is not part of answer of a syllabus. Cloud providers will buy a lot of extra resources, extra servers, and that may not be used always. So rather than simply sitting there and waiting for people to use, most of the cloud providers have this concept of spot discount, where you can bid for a machine. So if you select spot discount, you get two options. Eviction type means when that machine will be taken away from you. Either capacity only, your virtual machine will be evicted when Azure's excess capacity disappears. So Azure has this excess capacity, and then maybe a lot of people are using, and then Azure needs this, then it will take back from you. Or you can set price or capacity. Your virtual machine will be evicted when Azure's excess capacity disappears or costs exceed your specified max price. So I can say till this amount, I am willing to pay for this system. Okay, and then you can decide, okay, whether I should stop and deallocate this virtual machine only when that eviction happens, or should I also delete this virtual machine when that eviction happens. So we cannot use spot discounts for running a website, because whenever Microsoft want, if Microsoft is taking back the system, our website will be down, up, and all right. We can use it for some kind of batch processing. Imagine that we have a queue where we can pick up a task, do it, and then update the queue that it is done. Queue is just a first in, first out data structure. If somebody has some job, they can put it into the queue. And whenever we get that machine, we can take one job from the queue, do it, and update that, okay, it is done. Take the next job from the queue, do it, and update that it is done. And whenever we get back again, we will take the next from the queue and so on. So this can be really, really useful in case we need really, really powerful machines. Let us go back because it is outside the scope. We have something called a size here. I have something called a standard D2, standard DS1. So if I click on see all sizes, we have different types. Some of them may be for better graphics. So some of them may be optimized for storage. Some of them may be optimized for high performance compute. You have general purpose, you have compute optimized, you have memory optimized, you have storage optimized, you have GPU accelerated, you have FPGA accelerated. You can explore all of these things and then decide. So let us select a D series one, which is the standard. This is a Windows machine, right? So basically you need to set up a username and password. If you are planning to log into that virtual machine from your system, you will need to have RDP port opened. So what happens behind this port opening and all, we will discuss in detail within our networking sessions. If I need to run a simple web server without HTTPS, then I'll need HTTP. So we'll be creating a web server. So for that, we can select this also. If you want, you can do this later also. We'll go to this. Virtual machine is just a computer on cloud, right? It will need an operating system disk where your operating system, the Windows operating system will be installed, your C drive. Some storage sizes give you a temporary storage also. You also can have additional data disk. We will not create now. We can create now if you want, but we will see how to create it later. I am just going with the defaults, and then within locally redundant storage, you have premium SSD option, standard SSD option, and standard HDD. And within the zone redundant storage, you have only premium SSD and standard SSD. Let us go with standard SSD. And it is a good practice to delete with VM, especially when you are learning. But otherwise, there will be compliance related guidelines from your respective companies whether you need to select it or not. You can go with a super fast premium option ultra disk, which is not available in the combinations I selected. You can encrypt using platform managed key or customer managed key. So we'll go with the platform managed key. And data disk, we are not adding anything now. And we'll go to networking. So if you already have a virtual network, you can select, but we did not create it, right? So we can ask Azure to create it as part of this process. And since we plan to log into this virtual machine through RDP, you need a public IP address. Okay, network security group is that thing where actually all of these inbound access, outbound access, and all can be configured. We'll see them in detail in our networking sessions. For public inbound ports, we have selected 80 and 3389. Since we are practicing, it is also a good practice to delete the IP and NICVM when VM is deleted, or it will just stay in your account. There could be some limitation on the number of public IP addresses you can have. Available IPv4 addresses are getting reduced day by day. We will not select any load balancing options. Again, load balancing is a separate module altogether. You can use identity-based access management, which again is not part of 104 at all. It is mostly part of your SC300. So basically, you will be making use of your Entra ID user credentials. While learning, it is a good practice to enable auto shutdown. Okay, backup, there is a separate module. So we'll discuss during that. For monitoring also, we have a separate module. Advanced, so you can install extensions and then provide custom data and all. So now we are going to log into the virtual machine using RDP and install the web server and all, right? We can do it automatically using scripts and all. We will look into it later. These days, code is easy to get with ChatGPT and all other programs. But the concepts, if you are clear, then you can get help from them. And then you can add tags if you want, and then finally review plus create. So if validation is passed, you can click on create. So all of these things you have detailed labs you can practice at your own paste. We can go to resource. So this is our virtual machine. And if you need to connect with RDP, then you can click on connect and then download the RDP file and then login. Before that, let us check what all has been created here. So we just created a VM and then asked Azure to create the networking and other things, right? So Azure created a public IP, a network security group, a virtual network, a network interface card. So your computer will have a network card, right? So this is a virtual network card. Then you also have a disk. Okay, this is the OS disk. We will see how to create a data disk later. All of these networking things we will learn in our networking session, but at least you should have an idea, okay, what are being created behind the scenes. Let us go to the virtual network. This was created as part of the VM creation process, and then we have subnets. We have only one subnet called default subnet. We will now go ahead and connect with RDP. But before that, let me show one thing. Let me open in a new tab. I'll go back to virtual machines. And then in connection, I have RDP. Or if I go to more ways to connect, or if I directly go to Bastion. Do you still remember about Bastion? I talked about Bastion as the first thing of the day, right? If you search for Bastion here, you can go here and create a Bastion, or you can just deploy it from here itself, and it will say, okay, adding subnet, creating a Bastion. Okay, successfully added subnet. So if you come here to your virtual network, now a new subnet is added, Azure Bastion subnet. So the name has to be exactly same, or you can manually do all of those things. Okay, there are labs for both. So let us come back, and then we can download the RDP file, and then you can click on it. The downloaded file, I just double clicked and click on OK, yes, and it will open the VM. Here you have something called as add roles and features, and then you can click next, 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 and then you select this web server IAS, add features, next, 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 and install. So installation succeeded. Let us close. Search for File Explorer. And this PC, C drive, then inetpub, www root, and this file. Open with Notepad. Maybe make some changes. BT1. Save it. Okay, so now we have installed a web server. So now let us go back to our Azure portal. Okay, so I copy paste this public IP address and then I paste it here and then run it. So I can see the web server here. So see the BT1, the change we made. So we have created a VM and then we have set up a web server on that VM. So our Bastion provisioning succeeded. So here also you can give my username and password. So once Bastion is ready, without using RDP, I have logged into the VM using Bastion. Whatever changes we were doing there, I can see from here also. So now it is a different tab here on my browser itself. What all have we seen until now? We have created a virtual machine with Windows OS. We connected using RDP. We set up a IAS web server. We connected using Bastion, and then we can set up this Bastion from the Bastion service also. I've provided a lab you can refer. The next concept is capturing a image and then creating a virtual machine based on that image. Until now, we were using the image from the publicly available set, right? So now we will capture an image along with the web server that we set up, and then we will create a new VM with this image. Okay, when I go to capture, I have to click on image. The subscription is already selected. Resource group I can select. The region I cannot change. I have the option to share it to a gallery as a VM image version. I have selected it. And then I can say automatically delete this virtual machine image after creating the image. So this is needed if you are going with a generalized VM approach. So there are two approaches here. One, generalized VM means the image will not have any information about any specific things regarding my user that I created. So it will be a fresh image like the one you get from Microsoft, and then you'll have to provide a host name and all of those things. Or I can create a specialized image which will have all the details like username and all of those things within that VM itself. So the specialized option is generally for backups and all. But if you are planning to create one for others to use in a generic way, then the generalized one is the way to go. If you want to generalize a VM, first you have to do something from within the VM. You have to first prepare the VM for this process. I'll connect again. So we are in our VM through Bastion. I can go here and go to File Explorer. I go to my PC, Windows, System32, sysprep, and then there is a utility here. So I have to click on Generalize here and then shut down. Okay, and then I click on OK. Finally, when it is done with its thing, it will shut down. So the Windows machine is being shut down. Okay, close. Okay, I'll go to virtual machines. Okay, it is running. Okay, let us wait for some more time for it to shut down. So now it is stopped. Okay, so now I can go to this VM. I can click on capture image. Automatically delete this virtual machine after creating the image because there is no use, because we are going with the generalized approach. So there is no use keeping it there. Azure Compute Gallery is a place where we can store our images and then we can share. I'll create a new one. So my compute gallery, target image definition. So, okay. And you need to give a version number. Review plus create. Create. Azure Compute Gallery. It is a centralized repository. You can store your images there. You can version them, and you can share across subscriptions or even other tenants. What do you store in your photo gallery? Your photos, right? Similarly, in Azure Compute Gallery, you can have your images and then share it. Okay, deployment is in progress. Okay, there is a question. What is the use case of creating a VM image? Microsoft and partners have created a lot of VM images, right? So similarly, why do we create a VM image? So here, this is a very small setup where I have a web server running. I might have installed a lot of things, I have configured a lot of things, and then I create the image. You get all of those things when you create a virtual machine from that image. So now from that image, I can create n number of virtual machines. And all of them will have whatever software and setup I had in that virtual machine. This is kind of a template from which I can create n number of virtual machine. Otherwise, I will need to create a new virtual machine from a default image and then install and configure all of those things, right? So while this is progressing, let us see how we can add a disk. We don't have any virtual machines left to do it, right? While it is being done, I think it is faster to create a new virtual machine. This is for just for playing the disk, right? So as I mentioned, either I can add the disk now. It is still deploying. Okay, I can create a new VM. The new creation happened. So let us go to the resource. Okay, and then if you come to this under settings, you have the option to create and attach a new disk or attach existing disk. Create and attach a new disk. My new disk. If you plan to share this disk with other VMs, then you cannot use caching. Okay, so let us go with the default. And then I can click on apply. So now tell me, we have this virtual machine, right? So this is running. Try the Bastion option. Okay, if I go to this virtual machine, tell me one thing. Will there be a new drive now available? Yes or no? So few people said no, few people said yes. If I go to File Explorer, this PC, okay, I have only C and D. The new drive is not available here. As some of you mentioned already in the chat, we have to go to disk management. So it will give this option for me. Okay, initialize disk. You must initialize a disk before logical disk manager can access it. There are two options here, MBR and GPT. So GPT is the preferred one now. MBR is for the older ones. There is a warning also. The GPT partition style is not recognized by old versions of Windows. So you can go with that. So always when possible, you should go with the latest option. Only go with the older ones if you really have a need for it. So I have initialized it, and then if I go down, it is here as unallocated. So what I can do, I can right click, new symbol volume, next. I'll keep all values as is. So F is the default. I can give a different number also. Let us go with F itself. I can change the file system if I want, but I'll go with the default name. I can give perform a quick format. I'll go with the defaults and then I'll click on finish. So see, I have a new drive available here. So clear until now? Okay, good. Our image is ready. So if you go here, I have virtual machines. I have only the new one I created. So I have a data disk, right? So I can also create a disk and then attach it. How do I do? I can go to disk. I can click on create and I can select a resource group, disk name, my shared disk, region, availability zone. Maybe I'll give no redundancy for now. And then I can create it from any of the sources. I'll just say none. Encryption, I'll go with the platform managed. And for networking, I'll go with enable public access from all networks. All default. So here, I'm not enabling it as a shared disk because I want to enable it later. And then I can click on review plus create. So this is one way of creating a disk. It is getting created. Okay, deployment is in progress. So now I can come here, configuration. I can enable a shared disk. But if I go to my disk page, now I have a shared disk is the one which I created, which is not yet shared. my new disk is the previous one. So if I go to configuration, I will not be able to change it or update the max shares because it is attached. So what I can do, if I want to change this, I can go back to my demo VM, go back to this. I can detach it, apply. Now I can come back to this page. So now see, it is available. I can click on max shares. This count is dependent on the size of the VM and many factors. So if you go to the other one we created, so it has a higher capacity, right? So if you go to configuration and then you have better numbers here. Clear until now? And then once you enable shared disk, then you can attach to different virtual machines. This is a already available disk, right? But if you are creating a new disk, my shared disk, only for the first time, whenever you are adding it to the first VM, then you have to initialize and do all the things that we did. Otherwise, you have to just scan it and then mount it. So I've given the detailed steps in the lab documents also. Tell me how many of you have heard about how to put an elephant in a fridge. So open the fridge, put the elephant, close the door. How to put a giraffe. So you open the door, take the elephant out, and then put the giraffe inside, right? So similarly, if you want to move one disk from one virtual machine to another, you have to detach from one, and then you can attach it to other as straightforward. But if you want to share, then you have to do this. And one more thing, if I enable this sharing, and then if I go back to my virtual machine and then try to, so now I can go to attach existing disk, my shared disk. So see, so I in my shared disk I enabled sharing, right? So once you enable sharing, you cannot have host caching. Okay, so now we can come back to our virtual machine, and we can try to create a new Azure virtual machine. So this time I'll go with AZ104 for resource group itself, my VM from image. So this availability things we will see in detail next class. So will we lose data if we detach? No, data is still there. Whatever data was there in the disk, it is still there in that disk. As long as we are not reinitializing it or formatting it. So image. So here we can click on see all images, shared images, the one we created. So rest of the options are similar, like password. So since we have a web server, we'll also open 80. This can select. So here there is this option, right? Delete with VM. So I said while practicing, this is a good thing. But if you have some important data, you will not check this, so that data will remain in that disk, and this will not get deleted when the VM is deleted. So let us go forward. Networking. We need to make sure there is a public IP as a good practice. Create. So now I can go inside. So this is my new VM from my image. Okay, let us see if that web server is still running. Okay, so see our BT1 is running. So similarly, we can have more software and then take a image and then create virtual machines from that image, similar to how we will create virtual machines from the images from marketplace. And for most of these things, I have prepared notes also. and in the labs I have included, or along with the recording I will share them. We looked into creating an Azure virtual network, creating virtual machine with the OS. All of these things have detailed labs. So most of the labs will have some blog posts also initially. Even if you don't practice, also if you go through these screenshots, you can understand all the concepts. Because sometimes when you are preparing for an exam, or sometimes when you are just in need of doing these things at work, going through the complete video and then finding out things might be difficult. So then these cookbooks can be really, really helpful. Okay, and then compared to the general documentation, these has extensive screenshots, just like you would be doing it. Connecting to a Windows VM using Bastion we saw today, right? You can check the lab also. But if you want to do it from Bastion, then there is a lab you have to search for Bastions, create, and all of these things are there. And then I have provided some kind of explanation also. But if you are having any doubt at all, just let me know. And then finally, we have this Ubuntu when we have not done it. So sharing again, you can do. So we saw right how to make it a shared one, and then so whatever we did for that one machine, right? So that you have to do only for the first machine. Second machine you will not have to do that. And for Linux, I have included a lab. You have to search for virtual machines as always, Azure virtual machines. Again, all of those things. So here you will select a Linux image. Rest of the things are almost same except SSH public key. You can have password also here, but people generally go to Linux for better security, right? So instead of password, it is always a good practice to use SSH. And then there are different keys. So RSA is a popular one. So you can ask Azure to create one, and then you can use the same one for your multiple virtual machines. So it is SSH port 22. The rest of the things are similar. If you really want an assignment, so this practicing all of these things will be straightforward, right? So assignment, maybe after practicing all of those things, after practicing R1, 5.1, you can do all of these things on a Linux VM. So if you are not able to do not worry, we will see that also later. Any doubts? So now, if anybody wants, I can unmute you. You can ask doubt about today's session or previous sessions.
You told about Bastion. So if there is a one VNet and in that VNet there are 10 machines available, 10 VMs are available. So if I deploy one Bastion, using that one Bastion, I can connect to any of the VMs, right?
Yeah, so that is the whole idea of Bastion host, right? So the idea of Bastion host is you can connect to multiple machines through a single machine. So if your credentials are somehow compromised, you have to only take care of it in one place, not all the places.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, because Bastion is within that virtual network, so it will not have any restriction. It can connect to other machines through using its private IP.
Understood, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, so
Hi. You hear me?
yeah, I can hear.
Okay. So it is about a general thing only. So since we are now moving to Buddy Tutor, and I see the blogs where we used to have the notes. So for notes, we need to always prefer this Buddy Tutor or the CloudWorks.
No, notes will be CloudRix itself. So the links we don't want to change because even my published book has the links. So cloudrix.com links will not change, but in future, Buddy Tutor may have notes within the course, but the publicly displayed links are not going to change. So the goal is Buddy Tutor will be focused on courses, And Cloudrix will be for the blogs and community learning and most of the cloud community initiatives. And also we are having an initiative called the Culata initiative, through which we'll be building lots of cookbooks, some all of Azure certifications, all of AWS certifications, and in future GCP also, but now it is all of Azure and AWS. So we'll have quizzes, we'll have labs, so we'll have all of these things together. So it is a different model, and then you can either pre-order or you can even become an investor. So we have a lot of people as investors, and if you need any information, you can just go to kilato.com or kilato.com/invest. So that's it. Assuming no more questions, we can wind up. Do share your feedback about the courses here or wherever you are interacting with me or wherever you got the invites, so that others can also know about it, and then more people can come and then learn alongside us. Ultimately, it is about learning together and learning from the experiences and mistakes of a lot of other people. So thank you everyone for attending the session. Bye bye for now, and see you all in next class.